All right, we're live. Happy Monday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to do the usual, hey, let's give it a second for everyone to join us. And while we are, I'm going to say hi to our awesome guest, Emily Truman. I love Emily. I've worked with Emily for a while, and it's been a while since I've gotten to chat with her, so I'm really excited that we're doing this. Thank you so much for being here, Emily.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to take 1 second to get this live link posted in our event so that everyone who RSVP'd can find us and we can do all that good stuff. But while we're waiting, Emily, can you tell us a little bit about your design career, kind of how you got started, and why Ravelry has been so important to you as a designer?
My design career has kind of been in conjunction with working for Happily Hooked magazine. And so I was able to begin, well, I did have one previously published pattern, but it was kind of the push that I needed to get my own Ravelry store going and design on a regular basis. I think I was just a little timid and a little hesitant to put myself out there. So it was just kind of the kick in the pants that I needed.
We all need those every once in a while.
So it has really helped me because I'm also the editor over there, and I began my career at Happily Hooked as an assistant editor. So I've just spent years editing patterns and thinking, I know how to do this. I know how to write something.
Exactly.
I know how to make. I know how to design. And yeah.
That's what gets so many of us into this pickle. I can do this. And then here we are.
Yes, and then we kind of make the commitment, and it turns into some kind of lifelong pursuit of
you're not allowed out.
Your artistic expression.
I love it. Well, I'm so glad that you're here. We have a few people joining us so far. We have Natalia and Charlene. Hi, guys. If you are joining us live, please say hello. Tell us what the weather is like where you are. That is my standard question. I always want to know what the weather's like. And if you're watching us on the replay, feel free to send that stuff over as well so we can say hi. We're going to get started with some questions for Emily. If you guys have any questions while we're talking, feel free to send them in through the comments, and I'll get to them at the end. And so let's get started. First up, I think we'll get a big blanket kind of question. Why is Ravelry so valuable for yarnpreneurs? What is it that makes it such a platform for designers and just anyone kind of in the yarn industry?
Well, I would say to that Ravelry has a search function in on their platform that is so comprehensive. It's just like the Google of yarn.
Yes.
And you can search. You can search by yarn type, you can search by yarn weight, you can search by size of a garment, or for the recipient, if it's going to go for a child, or, you can search. They have seriously thought of everything. You can search by the number of fibers that the yarn contains.
Wow.
So if you're looking for a wool blend, it'll search for that. It'll say, you only want 2 fibers, and you can search for that. So then It makes it really specific, but also really broad. You can kind of run the gamut. So when you know how to frame your pattern for a particular search, you can get a lot of traction that way.
That's fantastic. It's like, for those of our audience that are familiar with SEO, for Google or even YouTube or Pinterest is also technically a search engine. Ravelry then becomes an awesome place to get your stuff found. And I think that's really cool because I'm not sure that many people think of it that way. I would say that most people's initial reaction is it's a shop. An Etsy style place for me to kind of sell my patterns or have a shop, and to make money from it that way. And I don't know that a lot of people kind of flip it and think about the search feature and how valuable that can be.
Yeah, I definitely think it's really valuable. I am not a huge, I guess I'm sort of shy, but I don't go out on Facebook very much and advertise my own work. I usually cater each pattern to something really specific. Like I'll use a yarn that I know isn't really common or doesn't have a lot of projects on Ravelry or doesn't have a lot of patterns on Ravelry. Mm-hmm. And because I know it's a new yarn and somebody's going to go specifically looking for a pattern, they get this new yarn, they see the pretty email and they're like, ooh, new yarn. We have to try the new yarn. So
We've all been there.
Yeah. I specifically design patterns like that. And so I am looking at the search engine because somebody's going to go in, type in that exact yarn, and my pattern's going to be the one that shows up. I sell patterns on a regular basis, and I basically do nothing for myself. It's all based on that search engine.
Wow. That is awesome.
Occasionally I sell, there's some residual Pinterest traffic, but I don't really post on Facebook. I'm really busy with my editor job at Happily Hooked, and I just don't have time to promote myself.
Yeah.
And so I just rely on that search engine to sell patterns, and they consistently do.
Wow, that's fantastic. I think that's probably really helpful for a lot of people because I think I constantly kind of try and help people see the benefits of SEO and the evergreen and kind of long-term benefits of working on things like that. And I think kind of reimagining Ravelry as a search engine allows you to tap into that. And that's fantastic for people who think that the only way or the majority of their time is spent on social media and they're not getting a lot of return on investment. You can spend that same time in a place where you can really see the returns coming back to you. That's really cool. Mm-hmm. So,
and you're focused on the right audience.
Yeah.
It's not just you make an ad on Facebook and it goes to all the people that shop at Red Heart or something like that. This is specifically targeted for, somebody's looking exactly for what you have.
That is a very interesting point because as makers, when we kind of take the yarnpreneur out of it, as people who love to just make things with yarn, I can tell you a million times where I went on Ravelry to look for something extremely specific because I needed an amigurumi for an adult that was like a food, like that's like a really weird search. But, there have been times where I've searched for things like that. Like I know vaguely some parameters of what I'm looking for, but I also want to be inspired. Like I want to just put in a few things and then see what comes up. And I think as makers, we've all done that. And thinking about it then from that audience perspective, okay, like who are you trying to grab? Are you trying to grab the person who wants to make the toast amigurumi for their friend, or the food for their kids to play with? Like, what are you trying to see? I'm very hungry. In case you can't tell, all of my searches have to do with food for some reason. But same thing. Like if you're looking, a friend is having a baby, you want to make like something specific for them. Like those are all scenarios where the person who's searching is looking for something very specific. And if you can tailor your listings and your patterns to reach those people, you have an endless supply of audience coming your way. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So that being said, I think I'm not sure that a lot of designers that I've come across or myself, I remember when I was very active designing, I don't know that I thought of it as a search engine, but what would you say the biggest mistake is that designers make when they're using Ravelry? So if you see a designer and they've got their stuff listed and maybe they have a few patterns, maybe they have a lot of patterns, but what is the biggest mistake that you see people making?
Well, sometimes I think people take it for granted that they, on the listing part of Ravelry, when you're creating a new listing, there's a lot of questions. And then at the very end, there's a place to type your notes. And you should have notes. You should say something about your pattern. But I use that more to say, this inspired me, some event or something I saw inspired me to create this pattern, and use that as more of my marketing spot.
Yeah.
And I just try and be really specific about the buttons that I'm clicking all the way through the pattern creation process. And I see some people sometimes fill that note section with so much information, and that section is not near as searchable as all of the steps before that when you're creating a pattern. And so I think I would recommend that you try and keep all of the notes that you normally would leave there in the very last section, and find the check mark for each one of them somewhere in the pattern listing creation process. For the sizing, you want to put the sizing in there. You want to put, if there's a specific type of yarn, or if it's just worsted or DK, whatever, you want to try and click those buttons throughout the process. And you might have somebody who just stumbles upon your pattern, but I don't find that is as much the case as people use it because they're searching for something they want to make.
Gotcha. So in order to really take advantage of all the search engine features, you want to use those things because that's what actually powers the search engine, right?
Right.
Nice.
Versus the notes section. You might just reserve that for a little bit of marketing or...
Gotcha. I think that's an awesome tip, because I know I've come across patterns on both ends of the spectrum. I've come across patterns where there's nothing in the notes section at all, and somewhere there's like a ton of information, again, like either sizing information or like yarn substitution or, like all of this different information that I feel like either should be in the pattern itself or, like you said, the different parts throughout the pattern listing process. And then I've come across patterns that are like right in the middle, and you kind of like the pictures draw you in and they meet all of your criteria because it came up in the search. But you also get like that cool little blurb from the designer of like what inspired them, or, why they made this, or they made it for a certain event or something like that. And that's the part that kind of cinches the deal, right? It met all your criteria for your search. The pictures are beautiful, and like there's a cool story behind it, or you feel connected to the designer because of that note section. So I think that's really interesting. I've never specifically thought too much about it. Like obviously I've come across kind of the gamut of what people have done. But I didn't really quite realize that the notes section wasn't as searchable.
Yeah.
So that being said, What is your favorite, and this might have a little bit, this might be kind of what we just talked about, but I'm curious if there's anything else. What is your favorite undervalued feature of Ravelry, or a feature that a lot of people tend to miss? Like, what is something that kind of flies under the radar that you think people should pay more attention to?
Well, I do think the search feature qualifies as an answer to that. But if you are just browsing, because there's plenty of people who just browse Ravelry as well, and you'll see up at the top, there's a drop-down menu, and it says different ways to search. You can search by hot right now, the patterns that are really trending on Ravelry. You can search by date published. You can search by, gosh, I can't remember all of them offhand.
There's like one that's like most favorited or something. I think that's one of them.
Yeah. And so, if you can put yourself in a position to land at the top of one of those, people go through and your Ravelry browsers will click that drop-down menu. And hot right now is really, that is a really popular one. So if you can do something to really increase the number of clicks to your pattern so that it's new views. For example, you can say on Facebook, hey, I have a new pattern. Go and give it a like, and then I'll choose a winner, and come back and tell me you did, and I'll choose a winner from the comments. And what that does, yeah, you might give away a few patterns, whatever you decide, but what that does is pattern, and it gets bumped up really fast until you land on the front page of Hot Right Now. And that feature right there, that Hot Right Now page, is where you can hone in on all the people that just want to look at pretty things. Yeah. And, they have some yarn and they don't know what to do with it, or they just want to make something, and they say, well, what is everybody making right now? And that's the page that shows it. So if you can figure out a way to get a lot of unique clicks over there, hearts, favorites, when you add it to your queue. So, actually the queue and the favorites are really important, because those are the two things that they tally to get up on the Hot Right Now page.
Oh, nice. Okay. So Hot Right Now, and just kind of, I think something interesting that came up while you were kind of explaining what that looks like is the different, you called them browsers, right? So you have your Ravelry browsers, and before we were talking about searchers, I guess they would be the people who are going for something specific. And I think that's an interesting dichotomy, because I know that I'm sure we've all been one at some point or the other. You might be a browser when you go on to like kill time and just kind of see what's new and exciting. And you might be a searcher when you have something specific to kind of make, and you want to make something specific for an event or whatever. Would you say that there's something that you can do? I'm thinking in my head, and you can either confirm or deny, that kind of when you go through the pattern listing process, you should be thinking about the searchers. And then when you go through like the marketing process, you can think about the browsers and try and get people to queue them and favorite them and visit them. Does that make sense?
You kind of cut out.
Did I? Oh, I can repeat
Sorry,
it.
It just kind of paused.
No, it's okay.
A second.
So when we're talking about browsers and searchers, would you say that you should be thinking about the searchers, right? The people who are going to be doing the searching when you're putting your pattern listing together and you're selecting all of your checkboxes and components and stuff. And then when you go through your marketing process, you should be thinking about the browsers, right? The people who are going to show up and click and favorite and do all that kind of stuff. Does that work? Does that make sense?
Yes, for sure.
Cool. I think that's like, I'm
That's
learning so
exactly.
much. I'm like, I mean, it's been a while since I've like, really gone on Ravelry as a designer, because I kind of paused my business when I started this. But I have been, obviously on just as a maker. And I think it's really fascinating to learn all of the ins and outs and the things that they tally to like, help you find stuff. And that's really valuable to know as a designer to get your stuff seen. So that's fantastic. Okay, so this one is for newbies. Right? Designers who do not currently have any patterns listed, people who are looking at getting into designing, or maybe they have their first design, but they haven't actually taken the plunge and listed it. So what is your biggest tip for those people who maybe have some Ravelry experience as makers, but not as yarnpreneurs? What advice would you give them to take the plunge from, not being on Ravelry as a designer to, being a full-fledged yarnpreneur?
Well, one, you just got to do it. You just got to jump in there
Love it.
you just got to jump in and do it. And you might have something that kind of tanks, and you might have some that do amazing. And, you just kind of have to take it all with a grain of salt and appreciate the successes, and there might be some failures along the way too, and that's okay. And the other thing is that very visual people, we're all artists, and so the first impression that you give somebody, meaning the photograph that you take, is really, really important in this process. Whether that be going and meeting a professional photographer, or being really careful with your own camera, I wouldn't recommend using the front-facing camera and just taking a selfie. The quality is not there, and even if you have your good cell phone and you ask somebody else to take the picture, I'm talking modeled items, but take the time before you make the actual listing to present it in the best possible way. You really want to, the photos a lot of times sell it. You can do that search, and once you do the search, what comes up is your photo, and that's how people choose.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice, because I do know that for some people, photography is it's a scary undertaking, because they feel like there's so much technical information that you need to take good pictures. And I think we've briefly discussed this before, but lighting is kind of everything. And I agree that as makers, we are very visual people. And after you conduct that search, what comes up is a bunch of pictures, and everyone does a visual scan. And whether it happens consciously or subconsciously, you are making decisions about what to click on, what you want to look at more details about based on that one picture. So I would agree that I think it's very important to get very specific about, what you're sharing on that front picture that everyone's going to see.
Mm-hmm. Get some really nice natural light, and don't take pictures inside with your flash. Those don't come up as well. And you go outside and get a nice background or some flowers in the back, and take a little bit of time to present.
I think that's awesome advice. And with that, I'm going to check in and see if anyone has any questions. Let's see. Oh, we have a few more people saying hi. Michelle said, hi, I'm an indie dyer in sunny and 75-degree Denver. Ooh, that sounds like good weather. Sherilyn said, sunny and warm in Southwest Missouri. Awesome. Rosina said, hello. Hi. Okay, I don't see any cues, so if you guys have any cues for Emily, please send them through. Anything that you've ever want answered about Ravelry. I know a lot of people RSVP to the event and they were like, I'm not going to be able to be there, but I really want to watch the replay. So I know there's probably going to be a lot of questions later, but we'll get those cues answered for you guys. So my last question, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what is the best way, and you provided one scenario before, but how many criteria go into actually calculating how something gets on the hot right now, and how can people kind of promote or help people push their pattern up to the top? What are some options for that?
So the two that I mentioned first were adding it to a queue on somebody. So if you can encourage that particular task and a favorite. And then they also add in there how many new unique views there are.
Okay.
So if you're just getting clicks, even that helps a ton. But I think the favorites and the cues are really you really get pattern testers, but when you get your pattern testers and they look over your finished PDF and you make any adjustments, hopefully they have made the project themselves, those pattern testers, and it also really helps to have projects listed as made under each pattern, because people go through and they see pretty pictures and then they say, well, but can I do that?
Yeah.
Mine's not going to look as good as that one. But if you have a couple pattern testers that might not be the professional photographers or might not have taken that step, but they're just ordinary people that crochet, and they show a picture and it fits nice, or it comes up, pretty easily, or they've done a review on it. Those things help a lot too. And making a project is a little bit of extra time, but it really is worth it.
Awesome. Well, I think those are some super helpful tips. We just had one question come in from Novella, so I'll ask this one. She says, is there a threshold of a number of patterns to start coming up in the search engine? Does it matter as a design? I think I know the answer to this one, but I'll let you answer it.
I don't think so. I mean, Ravelry is made for everybody. It's specifically targeted so that anybody can make a crochet or a knit pattern and have it, if it's promoted properly, it can come up in the search just as easily as your most famous designer.
Awesome.
If you are interested in free patterns, sometimes that can bump it up, but I think if you're starting, free patterns aren't exactly the way to, I don't know. That's a big debate in itself.
It is a big debate.
and do free patterns, but, or if you want to sell your work. So that one I'm not going to touch on, but if you, So anybody can do it.
I love that.
And just take the plunge.
So encouraging. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for coming on. I hope everyone watching had an awesome time. I know I did. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone say goodbye to Emily. If you're watching on the replay, say hi, ask any questions, and we'll get those answered for you. And then I will see you soon with another expert Q&A. Thank you so much for joining us. Talk to you soon.